Today we're talking about how to buy a house in a super competitive secondary market like Reno-Sparks, Nevada. But before we get into that, I'm speaking to people about their home buying experiences across America. So it's for a research project, and if you want to participate in that, click the link below and we'll schedule a time to chat. Today I have Dan Pitman, who's a realtor with Chase International, and he is right in the thick of this crazy hot Reno-Sparks real estate market. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Diane. Thanks for having me this morning.
Great to have you here. I can't wait to hear about all that's going on. So I will start with the basic question that everybody probably asks you. How's the market in Reno-Sparks?
It's tough. It's exciting, but tough. We have many buyers and fewer sellers. It just makes it very competitive and I think disheartening for a lot of people. So going about it the right way or having the right end goal in mind really sort of carries you through that whole process.
What are you predicting for spring? Because I know we're just getting into the season where the listings start coming on the market, and given all the forbearance and other issues out there and COVID still hanging around, what do you think is going to happen? And I know it's a guess, but what's your best guess?
Speaking with a number of lenders, I think one of them had a really good view on this. And he said, our interest rates are so low right now and they can't remain this low. At some point over the spring, they're probably going to kick up a little bit. And once they do, we'll probably see people stop refinancing because they won't have a reason to anymore. And you'll see people decide, okay, well, maybe I'll sell my house and buy another one. So hopefully we're going to see an uptick in listings this spring for that reason.
What's the situation right now? Like if I'm a buyer and I want to come in and buy, like a nice rental investment, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, 1,600 square feet, nice neighborhood, decent schools. What is the landscape like for a house like that now? Are there multiple offers? I mean, what would you be telling me?
Finding a deal is going to be tough. We've been pretty picked through and we have such few listings coming on. Normally I put them on a drip for things that are only cash only buys or things that may have been on the market for at least 3 months, things like that, things that other people have been ignoring. And then those are the kind of homes that the people selling them understand typically that there's going to be some sort of hit on them price wise because they're only selling cash. Or if it's been on the market a while, you can sort of undercut it as well. So with investors, I try to look that direction. But with this kind of market, you're really going to be paying, even if you are cash, you're probably going to be paying a little bit above ask, if not at, or putting some contingencies in that make the seller feel a little bit more comfortable.
Let's say I'm a first-time buyer and I'm trying to get that same kind of house. What percent, if you had to guess, are paying all cash versus conventional lending or FHA or VA, and can you even get into these houses with FHA or VA?
Yes, you can, absolutely. So I just got into one last night, and there's a process. There is, and there are things to keep in mind, and you have to make sure that you adhere to it and you see that end goal in mind. So cash offers, I'm running into a lot of them. We really are pretty much, and it's at different price points. If I'm say at 6, 7, 800,000, even above, I am running into all cash or high amounts of cash where if something doesn't appraise, they're willing to pay over. I know on a house that was just for, I think, $1.2 million, it went for 100,000 over. I was in contract on a house at 535. We had to make sure we went 25 over to get it. And that's with a lot of cash. And those are some of the cash buyers I'm helping. And we are running into those. And it makes it tough for first-time home buyers or people without cash to be able to pay maybe the difference above where the home appraises to compete against cash offers. But what the important thing to do there is to, one, be really consistent. As much as this is a very disheartening market, a lot of buyers are going to start dropping out or not going to look at homes that one weekend. And I've seen it again and again over the last 8 years, where if I'm consistent with the client, by the time that weekend comes, that we see another house and we go see maybe like the 30th house and we put in the 12th offer, for some reason, that's the weekend all the other buyers said, no more, I don't want to do this. So that's been very helpful. Another thing is making sure you try to push for that backup offer. A lot of agents on the list side I don't want to say lazy, but they're working their butt off dealing with all these different offers that when it comes to another great offer that could be in backup, they don't negotiate as hard against that. And neither do the sellers because they're so confident with the first offer they accepted. So we're seeing more and more backup offers actually come into play, and you take that first position within a couple weeks typically of going into contract.
If you had to put a percentage of how often that happens, like as a wild guess, is it like 5% of the time or 10% of the
Oh
time?
my gosh. I'll say this. Over the last about 8 years, I think I've had maybe one other backup offer come into play. And I've had about 3 or 4 over the last 6 months. So I would say maybe it's coming in 20% of the time now that I'm putting stuff in. So, 2 out of 10 isn't like the best odds, but I'd rather take a 2 out of 10 on a number of homes rather than writing one offer again and again and again and getting rejected just because you're beat out by someone maybe with more cash. So it's a good way of strengthening your position.
You touched on something really interesting that I think is a super important factor in this kind of market, and that's the mindset of the buyer. Because when you're going into a situation where there are so many other competing buyers, there's so little inventory, that person, like you said, that's the most motivated or the most consistently out there making offers is the one most likely to finally get a good deal. So beyond that, you also mentioned that offering over asking price is, a common practice. If you had to, again, guess about a number, what percent over is it taking to get the deal? Is it 5%, 10%, or does it just really vary depending on the property?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Part of that has to do with price point, and it's changed. I started this in 2013, and in 2013, it was maybe 5,000 over is what we'd be going, and then we'd say, in the event the home does not appraise, we'll pay up to 5,000, not to exceed the total purchase price. So you weren't on the hook for more than 5,000 over what appraised. If it only appraised 2,000 below, you'd only pay that extra 2,000. And that's changed. A lot of that has to do with knowing how many offers you're going against, and two, really, and this is falling on the realtor now, the realtor really needs to get in, dig in, and try to investigate what's happening with the other offers that are in there. So a lot of these homes, I would say, are 10 to 15,000 above, a lot of them. But I've seen multiple at normal prices going 30 to $40,000 above, and that's tough. It really is. Most people, that's a lot of money. That a lot of people just don't have that. So competing against that is tough. That's why the backup offer is so important.
My impression of the market is that when a good house hits the market, it can sometimes be sold the minute it hits the MLS, or even before if it's sold within the office, or even within hours. So are people taking the time to go see these houses, or are they making offers subject to being seen, or are they not even bothering? Are they just making the offers and then they'll sort out the details later?
That's a really good question, because that's where the backup offers are coming in. We're getting, like the one I just put in last night, we put in an offer last week, rejected. I followed up with them again a few times over the weekend, and again yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, the agent said, hey, the husband saw the property, the wife had not. She saw it today. They're out. They don't want it anymore. So the fact that I kept following up got us in there. So there are people that are going in one spouse at a time and making offers sight unseen. I spoke with another home the other day, just yesterday, that said that they put an offer in above ask. It was going to be cash, and they came in and saw it, decided not to purchase it. What I do for clients constantly, because a lot of these are Bay Area clients, Southern California, they could afford possibly to come up here, but that would have wasted their time. So as soon as I see a home hit the market, I'm in there with a video camera first thing, so they can see what that home is like. It's a good 20-minute video where I'm pointing out, what the fascia looks like, what I think the roof looks like, if it has Kitech plumbing or not, if I think it does. I am seeing more people do sight unseen offers. The problem is, though, those fall out. And so you really need to make sure that you have an idea what you're putting an offer on. If you can get your agent to get in there with a camera or if you can get the disclosures prior to, that's going to save you quite a bit. Any sort of education you can get in about that property.
This actually brings up another interesting point about this kind of market. The agent that you choose to represent you is super important in this. And you need to be motivated as a buyer. Like, you need to be ready to move when the opportunity strikes, but you also need to work with an agent who's very proactive. Like sounds like when something hits the market, you've got your client, you go in, you show it. Are we going to do something? We got to do it now. So it's this very intense situation. And if you're a buyer and you don't have that type of agent, you're probably missing out on deals, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is true. And as much as I'm on top of it, I have a few other agents that I team up with in these sort of situations just to make sure I can get information to clients as quick as possible. Sometimes it's still not quick enough. Things are very quick. So it takes two people. It takes the buyer to be taking a look at all the homes that are on the market. It takes the agent to set up the search correctly. And then as soon as there's an opportunity, we really need to get into that home as quick as possible and try to decide whether it's a no-go or not. Now, I don't like running around and having my guys do videos of every possible house that pops up. But if it's one that you look at, you go, gosh, I think that's it, 100% we're going to go in and we're going to try to investigate that thing as much as possible. When the right home hits, if you keep writing conservative offers, you're not going to get something on this market. You really have to write a very strong offer. Because even if you're not, say, number one and you're going to go into backup, that number two is normally a pretty strong offer, but just not as strong. So you still have to sort of bring it with your offer. The other thing, though, it really falls a lot on the realtor to do the investigation with the other agent of, are they going to be reviewing offers on what day? When are they going to be accepting them? Is there a possibility that they receive an amazing offer before the day that they plan to review the offers? Are they going to take it? And if that happens, will they call your agent prior to? Most agents I've met are just wonderful. They're all great people and they want to do their best. So if your agent puts their best foot forward and is just sort of honest about the situation and enthusiastic about you as a buyer in a genuine, authentic way, I think that really positions you for the best chance of getting an offer in on the house that you like and having it more considered than others and having more information to write the best offer you can.
That's actually a really interesting point, because not everybody thinks about this when they pick a realtor, but you want your realtor to have a good reputation within the realtor community as somebody who's proactive and on top of it and not difficult to work with. Because if you're a seller faced with 10 identical offers, sometimes the listing agent is guiding them in their choice of which to go with, and sometimes the agent that's easier to go with, work with, that's more professional, will sometimes, that's a factor that goes into the seller's decision among the many others. So it's just another thing to think about. And you also bring up another service that agents do that buyers aren't always aware of, where you're actually cultivating that relationship with the listing agent to understand the landscape of, who else is coming to the table, and trying to get as much information as possible as you can out of them about the other offers so that you can inform your buyer and maybe, improve yours. And it's across the board as to how they'll respond. Some of them are just tight-lipped, like, I'm not telling anybody anything. And others are like, oh, blah, 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 and they'll just spill all kinds of beans. And some of them are in between, and some of them will spill more beans to one person versus the other. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of a little bit, I don't want to say it's a dance, because you're trying to be genuine about it. I feel like people know when you're lying. So it's a very, very positive, enthusiastic, sort of flirtatious, like, let's get this done attitude. And as long as you can, and I know you know this, Diane, it's if it's something starts off right, we assume it's going to end right. If it starts off poorly, we typically don't even want to go with that offer because we know how it's going to end. So part of having a great offer is making sure that the agent, if they're listening to this, just really positive, kind, trying to work with the other agent to get something put together that the buyers are happy, so they're in contract, and we have an expectation of how the escrow is going to go.
So Dan, can you kind of, we talk about this good offer all the time, and I think buyers don't always know what that means. So can you kind of go over the high-level bullet points of what constitutes a good offer.
They're going to want to see a lot down. They're going to want to see a strong offer price. In our market, it's going to be over list typically, unless it's just crazy. We don't always look at comps in our market right now. We're looking, how do we get you into contract? That's one of the best services we can do, is fight off, the other 10 offers to get you in, and then try to find the best way to steer that ship, towards the best outcome for you. So conventional offer is going to be a good amount of money down. Shorten up on the timelines for contingency. Sort of like in our market, it'd be normal to have like a 15 to 17 day inspection contingency. If we can shorten that down, your appraisals are tough in this market because it's so busy, especially with home refis. Trying to shorten that time, shorten the amount of time it's going to take to have the loan approval. With that comes the consideration of who the lender is. If they're seeing like a Wells Fargo, a Bank of America, those are notoriously long. Finding a good local lender who typically has really good rates, better fees, and their timeline is better, and the communication is going to be better with you is helpful. One of the things the buyer's agent needs to do is ask the other agent, is there anything else that's really important to this seller beyond just price? Sometimes it's they need a lease back for a certain amount of time, so that allowing the seller to stay in there for a certain amount of days, and then we can sort of figure out how much rent you want that to be based on what you're paying. Or if you don't have the cash to go over, maybe that 2 weeks supplemented rent is an extra like $1,000, $1,500 that you have to pay yourself, but you're saving the seller, so it's light paying over. And that's sort of conventional. FHA and VA fall in the same manner. It's just sort of what other fees you can take off. FHA, short contingencies, additional terms if you can, if you're paying with cash over, things like that. VA is tough because there are some things that lenders allow and some don't, compared to which lender the buyer is using. And so some fees are really dumb. Like the buyer can't pay for the pest inspection, so you ask the seller to do it. In my case, it's $120. I would rather pay the $120 on my end to just go ahead and say, don't even worry about that seller. This is how easy we are to work with. Cash buyers, though, sometimes you run into multiple cash offers. So like last year, I had one at around $985 I was going into. My clients didn't want to go over because the house had been on a while, but we were competing against another offer. And so what we did was we went with a large earnest money deposit, because it was very important to the seller that the buyer not back out. So what we did is we went with a high earnest money deposit, and then once we finished our inspection contingencies, half of that went non-refundable and released to the seller immediately. So I didn't increase the cost of the purchase to my buyer. We still protected him. Everything went fantastic, but from my understanding with the other agent, we were neck and neck with that other offer. The only thing that changed is we said, we'll give you, as soon as we're through this, we're going to give you $5,000. And so even if we back out, at least you're $5,000 ahead. And so like these little things that you can put in that might not increase your value or might make the seller feel more comfortable are big things. So big ones are higher earnest money, shorter timeline contingencies, large down payment, willing to pay above appraisal, and then finding if there are any other additional terms that are important to the seller, whether it be lease back, whether it be a long escrow, a short escrow, just things like that.
Yeah, this is such a great point, because people often wonder, well, what do realtors get paid for? And this is what realtors get paid for. It's these strategies that get them the deal at the best possible, price, whether it's the buyer side or the seller side. And it's this thinking that really is where the money's at. Are buyers doing anything questionable to get the deal? Like, are they waiving the appraisals contingencies? Are they waiving the home inspections?
Yes, I'm seeing that somewhat. Of course, we always recommend they don't waive home inspections, just because you really want to know what you're buying, or at least you have the right to do a home inspection, but it's not contingent on that home inspection. So there are ways to protect you there. But yes, we are seeing people waive appraisals quite frequently, and that's sort of like the cash above, where I was at a home recently. I think it was on the market for $478, and I know they had an offer in at $500 with the waived appraisal, meaning that no matter where that home appraised, they had to get a loan still, and the lender's going to require that appraisal. But no matter where the loan appraised, the buyer was willing to pay whatever the cash difference was between those. In this case, I ran the numbers. It looks like it was going to be about $40,000 different. On the inspection side, people are waiving inspections. I highly encourage them not to, though they still have the right to do them. You just can't back out over them. So this is where things like the HOA contingency in our market saves you, because you can back out over many, many parts of the HOA if you don't agree with, such as they don't allow short-term rentals. That's an easy one because most of them don't. And that normally comes into play later in the contingency, because normally it takes about 3 or 4 days for title to order those documents and get the seller to pay for them. Legally in our state, it's 10 business days for the HOA company to deliver those docs to title. So that's 12 days plus the initial 3 to order. We're 15 days into it. Once you receive them, you have 5 days to review them. And by the end of that 5th day, if you want to back out over them, you can. And I can't imagine really a situation where you wouldn't retain your earnest money at that point. So that's another contingency that hangs out there if you have an HOA, which is great. So if you did waive inspections, you can still do them. But then you have the HOA to say, we don't want to stay in here because of the HOA. So there are sort of trickier ways to protect you.
Yeah. So one of the classic techniques that people use in a really hot market is the love letter to the seller about the property, as a way of just personalizing the offer amongst many. And I know that recently the National Association of Realtors has kind of put a kibosh to this because of fair housing concerns, or for at least realtors writing these letters. How are you seeing that play out in the market? Are people still using these letters, or are they depersonalizing them? Does this even still work?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's a factor I forgot about. I have my clients write them in these situations all the time. Sometimes they're a little bit too personal, a little bit too, I don't want to say it's not sob story, but it's too like, here's my situation, please pick me because of this, rather than here's who we are, here's what we love about the house, and here's where we see ourselves being. And of course, I always put a picture on there with that letter. But those are important. Write one up that tells you a little bit about yourself, why you love the house, anything sort of fun. Basically, I hate coming back to this, but when I say flirtatious, it almost is. It's almost like a first date. They see it, they see your profile, and they're like, oh, I like that person. I could see doing something with them. And if the agent was good to work with, they have the right lender and the right offer, it helps bring things together. So I want to say over the last maybe 5 or 6 letters I've submitted, I think 2 of them said they were picked because of the letters. So that was good. So, I mean, that was helpful.
I always found that it worked because, your home is a very personal place. Even the most investment-minded seller that's lived there for a bunch of years, can be swayed by the family that wants to move in and continue the tradition of taking care of the property as well as they have. So it is, not everybody responds to it. Some of them are just very cold, hard cash people, but
yes,
a lot of people, when they've lived in the property, it's sentimental, and that stuff matters. So we've talked a lot about buyers who are obviously motivated to get into the market, very little inventory. So you've got this level of frenzy, I want to say, that's happening right now. What about these buyers that are worried about overpaying in another replay of 2007?
I have buyers right now that they're concerned about overpaying. We go through all the numbers before they write it so they understand where they're at. The problem is, as soon as they close, they're the next highest comp, and the next home that's going to sell is probably going to be at that one or higher. It's tough because that's just sort of what it takes our market. That's what's happening in our market. If you want to sit on the sidelines, that's okay. I recommend almost going out and writing an offer on something. Write a strong offer so you can sort of see that even if you have a strong offer, it might not come through, to really sort of, I don't want to say get a check of reality, but that's sort of the thing sometimes that a buyer needs, is they have an idea of how everything works. They've watched plenty of HGTV, which is fine. They know how their friends got houses, and they have an idea of how they think this is going to go. And then they get into it. They realize how much they love a house, how much they want a house. They put in a strong offer, and they get told, no, that one didn't work, because sometimes it takes a few houses to get. And that situation, they might realize and have a better idea of what it's actually going to take to get a house, and whether they really want to put the effort forward. Talking to people that are trying to figure out what's happening in our market, I really try to talk to them about what sort of lifestyle they have and what are they trying to do with their purchase, really more than anything. If their concern really is saving every dollar from their sale, from one property to purchase in Reno, I hate saying it, sometimes Reno might not be the market for you.
Are you seeing investor activity in the Reno-Sparks market right now? And if so, what kinds of properties, what kinds of activity?
A lot of investors I've worked with are always right up to about 500,000. They want to make sure that their capitalization rate is good. They trust that if I see something good, I'll let them know. I send them up on a search for the sort of the same ideas earlier, all cash, or things that have been on the market a while, things that have just reduced into a certain price range. If they see them and they like them, and if I see them, we're working together, and we'll try to figure out if that's the right home for them. But I'm not seeing a ton of investors.
Are you seeing any flippers in the market?
The flippers that I'm seeing, Diane, are the ones that are not finding homes in traditional manners. They are doing the cash, the long days on market, but a lot of them are sending out letters to homeowners privately and seeing if they can find a deal that way. And those are the people I'm finding are flipping, and that's how investors are getting more properties than going through the MLS currently.
Do you know of any buyers that are actually out there doing that as well, like targeting their neighborhood and
Yeah.
writing those letters like, hey, I'd like to buy your house?
Yes. And I've done those for years. I feel like they have a low probability of hitting, but you hear the stories of it taking place. So I don't want to say that's not a way to go. I just haven't had as much success with that. But yes, there are people out there doing that. I am seeing more realtors posting pictures online on Facebook showing that they're out knocking doors, trying to find a house for their client.
Oh my gosh, door knocking is back.
Yes.
So have you had any conversations with sellers who are in forbearance and who are thinking about selling, or are they still just holding tight?
None of the people I have spoken with have been in that situation. Unfortunately, I don't have any information on that.
So I know there are sellers in the market who might be interested in selling, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but maybe they fear selling because they don't think they can find another suitable property, especially if they're trying to downsize. So what do you say to those sellers? How do you advise them?
So that's tough because I'm dealing with that with a number of people right now, because that is a situation that's popping up, whether it be a downsizing or just trying to go to another house with lack of inventory. What we've done, and I've done this multiple times, even when it wasn't a hot market, just try to put my client in the best situation, is we prepare their house. Their house is ready to go. I have all the pictures and everything done. As soon as we find the house they like, we put an offer in and say, if you accept our offer, our house is going to be on the market tomorrow, because we have all pictures, descriptions done, everything. So they're ready to go that way. Another thing is I have people that are selling that are willing to go into a rental until they find the right house. That's sort of the reality of our situation up here. And the other end is you could always do what we refer to as a reverse contingency. When we talk about it as a contingent offer, we typically are referring to the fact that the buyer needs to sell a home prior to purchasing. So you could always do like a reverse contingency, saying, when we accept this contract, seller has 30 days to get in contract on another home, and sale of this house is contingent on seller's ability to purchase a new home. You could do that. I've done it a handful of times in the past, and I've never had it turn out poorly. My clients always end up getting into another house.
A couple questions based on that. My first question is, if you want to go into rental temporarily while you look for a house, how easy is that to do? How's the rental market? And then the second question is, do sellers even accept contingencies like that in this market?
Speaking with other agents that I know real well, that I'm good friends with, those are the things that some of their clients are doing. The seller says, I don't care what's happening. I'll go into a rental if I have to. So they're throwing it as an option because they want to find something, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But rentals are tough in this market. We're seeing a lot more people buy new builds, and which allows someone to sell their house, know that it's going to be 6 months before their home is built, and then do a rental during that time. So we've been seeing that quite a bit because it allows someone to sell their house, go into a rental, and then buy their new house. Contingent offers, we hear people say those aren't being accepted, but the one I got accepted yesterday as a backup offer, it is contingent on the sale of my buyer's home. That being said, there are three different situations you can be in with that contingency. I'm going to go from strongest to weakest. Strongest is you have your home on the market that you're selling as a buyer. It is in contract, and it's through most contingencies. In contract being key, as in you've already found someone wants to buy your house. Second weakest being that your home is on the market with no accepted offer. So people are trying to find, you're trying to find a buyer, which at that moment, the seller's wondering if you're priced too high, how motivated you really are to get that home into contract so you can finish the purchase. And the third would be your home's not on the market yet. That's your weakest one. So whatever you could do to get closer to that strongest situation for your contingent offer is going to best align you. So if your home's not on the market yet, getting those pictures ready, getting the description ready. So at least you can instill confidence in that seller saying, look, homes are going within 5 days in here. Here's the price we're expecting to do. Here's how this other home sold down the street with 12 offers. So we know that there are other buyers in this neighborhood still looking. So as soon as we're ready, we're just going to get right on. Typically, when you're selling a house to buy a house, you would, on your purchase, say that your contingencies don't start until your contingent house is in contract. Well, another thing you can do is start rattling off and nailing those contingencies. Instead of saying, once this house is in contract over here, we want 15 days to get inspections done, we can just say, nope, as soon as we're in contract, we're going to get inspections done no matter what happens over here. So just showing the motivation to the seller that you're moving forward no matter what.
You mentioned new home building. What's the scene like in Reno these days? I know for a while it stopped after the crash, and then now I know they've been slowly making their way back. How is that in terms of satisfying demand?
New home builds are tough. They are and they aren't. You're getting all across the spectrum of pricing. The first-time home buyers are having a tougher time. You're getting a little bit pushed out further on the edges of Reno and Sparks, though there are builders that are doing those. It's important, if you're going to be looking at a new build or you're considering those, is let your agent know right away. Let them get your name on the builder's lists and do whatever the builder says that needs to happen to be on those lists that are qualified. So going on and getting pre-approved with their lender, I would do that right away. And just checking in with the builder every month. The reason is they'll have a whole list of people typically, and they'll go through and they'll make a call. And as they go through and make those calls every month, 10, 15 people get off the list because they've already bought houses in the meantime, so on and so forth. So being on those lists is very important because they'll go through, and even if you're 40th on the list, you might come up sooner because those other 40 buyers, other 39 buyers are still looking for homes. So they might not all be buying new. That being said, some builders, because people have gone this way, because it has been such a competitive market, have a high number of people on their list. I was at one the other day. We're like 150 on their list, and we're a year and a half out before we can go into contract with them. That being said, those 149 other people are going to be buying houses outside their same plan. They're going to be buying houses outside the new build. So being on those lists and doing what you can to qualify is important. Getting your agent to do it is good because you can have an agent involved in the process. It's not going to cost you anything. And then you can have your agent making sure that they're making those calls every month to that builder and just sort of see where you're at on there and you sort of gauge if you're going to be in contract sooner or how much more we need to be, looking at the MLS for other homes.
Yeah, having an agent on your side for a new home build is really valuable because they can tell you what's normal and what's not normal. I mean, I know with a new home build, you have so much more paperwork to sign than the typical resale. So yeah, it's good to have someone on the team. So Dan, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else you would say to both buyers and maybe sellers?
I guess the final word is be consistent. It's a lot of work on the agent to drop everything, their family life, what they're doing at the moment to make sure they get out and get you into a property. So make sure it's the right property that you like. Work with your agent to make sure you put the best offer you can in. Don't get disheartened. It is tough, but follow the steps. Go see the homes, be consistent, try to put in backup offers, and be strong with those offers. And I think that you will find success. It might just take time.
It seems like it's a marathon, not a sprint in this kind of market for the buyers. Yes. And then what would you say to sellers?
Try to give yourself time to get the best offer in. Don't take, you might get an amazing offer after that. If it is the right offer for you, take it, great. Sometimes it takes, a week for the right people to see it to put in the right offer. Not all areas and price points are going to have the same reaction. If you have a condo and a townhouse in an area that first-time home buyers are looking, or maybe aren't zoned for the best schools, you might not have that person willing to pay $10,000 above, or the difference between the appraisal and the contract price. I think sellers should be excited that when they put their house on the market, they should get interest. They should be getting good offers. They shouldn't be getting lowball offers. You have the ability to ask for a little bit more to make sure that that offer is stronger in the means of earnest money deposit for strength and tighter timelines. And just be willing to work with the buyers, because it's going to be tough on their side as well. Just getting the appraisal in time, the lending done in time. I think everything will come together for both sides really well.
Well, Dan, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain the lay of the land in the Reno-Sparks market right now. I'm going to go ahead and put your contact information in the description below. And as a reminder, anybody who wants to participate in my market research call, please click the link below and schedule a time. And I just want to say thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.